GOAT district, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT district, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
What is up, Fantasyland? Welcome back to the GOAT District. Going into week 9, similar to Squid Games, right? Less and less teams are at the top, more teams at the bottom, similar to the tight end position, actually. But like we do it every week, guys, coming in strong with a huge guest again tonight. So smash the like, smash the subscribe. You see him on the screen. He doesn't really need an introduction, but we will give him one anyways. Director of Analytics, at Establish the Run. Mike Leone, welcome to the GOAT District, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm pumped, excited to do this show.
So nervous. I'm tripping over my words over here, buddy. We are pumped to have you on tonight. In all honesty, man, big fan of your work. Anna Jimenez jumping in as usual in the chat. Dan and Theo, I know you guys are pumped for tonight. This is one we've been waiting for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great honor to have Mike on, and we're happy to kind of pick his brain on a pretty tough week this week. So it's well timed.
It's a juicy one, Theo.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. We had a great show this summer with Justin Herzig, our Dynasty league mate, also an Establish the Run guy. So hoping we get that same kind of goodness tonight out of Mike, as I know we will.
I got to beat Justin, so.
There you go.
It's very tough. It's very tough.
It is.
If you're not already, guys, he's at 2 Hats 1 Mike on the Twitter machine, and you can find him, like we said, Establish the Run. Talk to us about Establish the Edge. Great podcast. I know you're a big DFS guy, but you kind of mix it up on there with some redraft. Let the people know what they can expect if they're not already following.
Yeah, the Establish the Edge podcast. I actually had started that with Pat Corain when he was with ETR. He's now full-time with NBC Sports Edge, doing great stuff. But the idea of the podcast was kind of, I mean, it's called Establish the Edge, but that was kind of what we're trying to do is, think about things in maybe a little bit of a different way than usual fantasy to find where our edge can be. So as a result, it's, kind of a hodgepodge of episodes. We'll do Dynasty, we'll do DFS, we'll do straight redraft, just kind of trying to think through concepts. Recently had Joe Holka on, which was a really good podcast, was kind of half, how do we approach FanDuel tournament strategy? How does that differ from DraftKings? And then half, how do you establish your edge just within the industry, like doing stuff that you guys are doing, me and Holka are doing, how do you kind of carve out a role? Because I know a lot of people are interested in that. So we kind of cover a whole slew of topics.
Yeah, and that's, big reason we're pumped to have you this week is exactly that. It's a juicy week. There's a lot going on, injuries, not so good news today that we'll touch on for sure, but we bring you in on an important week. Talk to us about, were you part of that, the walk-off CeeDee Lamb? I know you mentioned something. I watched it, and I can't for the life of me remember. I was laughing the whole time. You were on there, right?
Yeah, we do a show called Tilt Space on Sunday nights. Me, Joe Holka, who I just talked about, and Peter Oversat, where we've got a bankroll we started for the year, and we enter DraftKings tournament, sometimes FanDuel ourselves. And we had that week was kind of wild. It was the week that Dallas was at New England, and game went to overtime. And we kind of were on this show the whole time. It started off being kind of a boring show because our teams were basically dead. And then this team just rose from the bottom, like dramatically in the last 10 minutes, culminating in this walk-off CeeDee Lamb overtime touchdown, last play of the game, last play of the entire DFS slate. And we came in third in one of our higher stakes tournaments. So that was really exciting.
That was
awesome.
Yeah, it was so entertaining. I catch so many of those shows on the channel, and that's why I'm like, I couldn't remember, but that was definitely an entertaining one. Sorry, Theo.
No, I was just saying that's awesome. That's tremendous. Nothing better than live DFS, with the swings and all that. That's fantastic.
We've had the sweats on both sides, and it's definitely a lot more fun charging from behind versus, just praying every game ends and just watching the clock tick, tick, tick. So it was definitely fun to be on that side of the sweat.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's way better. There's nothing worse than just watching the guy you don't need to score wide open. You're like, no, don't throw it.
Yeah.
You're hoping it's a Carson Wentz to Jonathan Taylor. No, I don't want to throw it there. I'm going to throw it somewhere else. But yeah, it's a lot of fun doing that. We do the same thing in season long. This is a time of year where teams are starting to charge a little bit. Me and Theo have a team that we have that's been moving right on up the rankings pretty well. And we're having trouble like winning individual games, but as far as like our total points, they're going great. So sometimes you just got to take it where you can get it. We should definitely make the playoffs in total points, and if our team keeps coming together the way it is, could do some nice stuff.
Yeah, that's a fun team. I mean, this time of year is just like Dan was saying. The finish line is in sight, and it's. You got to keep read and react with the news, and you got to keep making your roster better. But it's really exciting when you have a good team this kind of a year, and you're making small little changes. So yeah, I'm with you, Dan.
So guys, smash the like, smash the subscribes. We're gonna get deep into it. Theo, I'll let you kind of start it off here. Analytics for the edge, and talking about edge, like we said, guys, we're here to give you that edge every week. Smash the like. Theo, let's jump into the goodness. Let's pick this man's brain.
Yeah, so we'll start out with kind of a broad question, and you can approach it any way you want, Mike. But what is your general approach to data analysis, and how do you use analytics in your approach to season long and DFS? Are there specific metrics you immediately look at when analyzing a game, or is it more about taking a step back, looking at a bigger picture, and then zooming in?
Yeah, it's generally taking, the step back, looking at big picture for both season long and DFS. My macro approach to data analysis and how I use it is I try and find where I can add value. I think sometimes people try too much to add value in a whole ton of different ways. I'm a bit of a data guy. I'm not a film guy. I've got Evan Silva's whose brain I can pick, for that side of things, for the NFL side of things. Or, I'm really close with Pat Corain, even though he's not with ETR anymore. And he knows prospects way better than I do. So take Jamar Chase, for example. I can trust someone who has a much better idea than me that Jamar Chase is one of the best wide receiver prospects we've ever seen. One of the best prospects since Amari Cooper. So then what I'm trying to do is take that qualitative information. I'm not trying to make my own determination. I'm not trying to watch film on Jamar Chase to figure out, but I'm trying to take someone whose opinion I trust and see, how can I kind of quantify that for season-long fantasy? And then for me, like with Jamar Chase, it doesn't mean, I'm going to put him in the 4th round because, Pat Corain likes him, but it is, I'm going to put him down in our projections for a 20+% target share, which might seem aggressive for a rookie, but I think he can earn it just based on his talent and his skill set. So that's like a pretty specific example, but that's sort of what I'm trying to do is, where I think my edge is kind of understanding where I add value and like quantifying some of the stuff that other people who do add value and are better at other things than me do. And, that's very broad, but it applies to both season long and DFS. And I think with DFS, a big component of it is really not swaying too much to just what happened last week. And I think the DFS market in general has gotten a lot sharper where they don't just game log watch anymore. But that's a big thing is kind of trusting what's stable in terms of the volume guys are getting and what might be a little bit more fluky, which is like the efficiency side of things. Guy might just have a crazy high yards per target. We're expecting that to regress. And that's where I can sort of add value and be like, listen, I know, this guy scored 20 fantasy points last week, but, he only saw 5 targets. And we can kind of quantify that in a pretty sharp way.
And it all works beautifully until we get to Robbie Anderson, right?
Oh, no. We were supposed to save Robbie for later. You're just throwing him at me right away.
Dan's got to throw that in there every episode, eh? Nice and early this time.
Thankfully, Dan, Robbie Anderson did us all a favor and only saw one target last week, so we could just maybe wipe him from our minds and not think about it. But I was joking that I was playing a game of chicken with Robbie Anderson where I couldn't resist the 9 targets. It's like it's got to come sooner or later. But this is what I mean, where the field's getting a little bit sharper with game log watching. Like he was owned in 10% of rosters, in the Million Maker last week on DraftKings. So, which was higher than you would expect given what he's done. So, thank you, Robbie. You've won the game of chicken. You only saw one target. I can stop rostering you.
Yeah, same. I can stop putting him in my starting lineups for my redraft leagues too. It's just that was painful for a while.
Brutal.
And how do you see a correlation when you're preparing for the season? The correlation between season long and DFS. So you're analyzing you're analyzing basically two sides, but they kind of come together.
Yeah, where they come together is we get a pretty good idea for our team expectations for play calling. That's like a big thing that I feel like I have an edge in quantifying a little bit, is sort of understanding how teams are going to operate and, just backtesting some models, like understanding like their total pace plays per game, their pass rate. And, that's a really direct application to DFS right away, week 1 from season long. And then also, just all the work that we go into season long for kind of figuring out guys' true talent levels, like this guy's going to get this much yards per catch and, the efficiency metrics. Those are very helpful. Where it can kind of differ is in season long, a lot of times we're weighing like the upside that can occur over the course of a season. And you got to retrain your brain for week 1 to be like, okay, maybe I was really high on Tony Pollard because of the contingency value on, something happening to Zeke Elliott. But you got to understand the situation week 1, or even a situation like Jamar Chase, who I was really high on season long, felt like over the course of the season could earn this target share. It ended up happening faster than I thought, but week 1 DFS, you have to be a little bit more reasonable, understand like, okay, what's the situation for this exact week? I'm not going to implement all that enthusiasm, for something that's going to happen over the course of the season. I have to do my best to kind of pin down exactly what the role is going to be for this specific week.
No, I think that's great. That's great stuff. JD, do you have any follow-up questions on that?
Yeah, I was before I pass it to Dan, is there a way that our audience that can maybe better utilize analytics in the way that they approach, to become, we're talking about giving an edge. Is there something that maybe you think players are not paying attention to that maybe they should be, that might give them that edge?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's hard to pin down one thing. I guess the biggest thing for me is kind of like having this patient mindset, especially when it comes to DFS, sometimes with season long, and just understanding that I think we do a pretty good job over, 1, 2 game, even 3 game samples of not overreacting. But football is a really small sample size as a season that, guys can run bad for even like 5, 6 games. And like trying to make that determination between, I know you had, something on here about, Allen Robinson to talk about later versus Brandon Ayuk, but like kind of understanding, do I be patient with a guy like Allen Robinson? And that's where I think if you kind of look at the role and the play calling, what we're seeing, is sort of what we're going to get, moving forward, versus there might be some other players where Robbie went down the wrong way, but players like him who maybe are earning this really strong target share, and we know they're just going to regress from an efficiency standpoint. Didn't happen with Robbie. We lost out on that, but like sort of just taking that long view over the course of the season. I know that's not like a specific metric type thing, but I do think using analytics can kind of help us to do that.
Danny's speaking your language with patience, right?
Definitely. That's the greatest thing I can bring, and also sometimes my greatest curse is being a little bit over patient.
I feel you, Dan. I mean, that's how I am. As we're going to talk about some waiver wire candidates, that's the same thing too, where I'm like, I'm the guy sometimes sitting there with too much fab money because I'm a little too patient with the guys on my roster and a little sometimes too picky with the guys that are out there on the wire. But as you guys noted, it's time to make moves.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure. Yeah, so I'm going to kind of turn that same question from JD, on its head a little bit, and ask: Are there any things that you see like out on Twitter or in your leagues, like players using analytics in the wrong way or just not paying attention to what they really need to be? Like they're following red herrings, things that don't really matter, that aren't predictive, that you just see people constantly doing in the game.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, in the past, I would have said game log watching too much, but I think people have started to get a little bit better with that. They're a little bit better on the patient side of things. I think people are also a little bit better in understanding, target share versus raw targets, and, where that can be a misnomer where a team just has, maybe a fluky high, pass rate for a few games, and some guys are spiking in terms of targets, but their share is actually pretty low, and that should adjust what we're doing going forward. So I think the mistakes people might make sometimes are in like these opportunity metrics are becoming more popular and they can be really good. Like expected fantasy points based on, you get a carry from the 6-yard line. Like that has a certain expected fantasy points. And it's a nice kind of tool to quickly kind of see guys who've been unlucky and guys who have been lucky and see if they'll regress. But the component I think of that people miss sometimes is that's contingent on those opportunities remaining the same moving forward. So if I've been really unlucky based on my role, it's like, yes, the fantasy points should arise if that role stays the same, but sometimes that's a question mark if that role will stay the same. And that's where like maybe, I'm using two sides of the Robbie Anderson thing where like maybe I made a mistake with Robbie where it's like, a guy like that maybe has been so bad that we should actually expect the volume to come down, even though if it were to hold, he would perform obviously better than he did. So there's sort of two sides of that coin, and it's a little bit nuanced, but I think that's, a mistake sometimes people make is leaning too much on those expected fantasy point metrics that are born solely out of opportunity and don't look at how predictive that opportunity might be moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And then another one that, I kind of started realizing this year was sometimes tripping me up is, like a running back, getting a good opportunity score because he got a carry from the 5, and then he got a carry from the 3, and then he got a carry from the 1, and so you got 3 big opportunity scores, but if those all came on the same drive, the same set of downs, it's, it like overstates in my mind.
Yeah. So I didn't mean to get you. That's a super good point. I was actually thinking that in my head too. There was a game 2 years ago with the Bills where I think Frank Gore had 4 straight runs from the 1-yard line and didn't score. So, you're looking at these, on that drive, he had like 2 expected touchdowns. It's like, obviously you can only cap it at 1 full. Had he scored on the first one, we would have said he had half an expected touchdown. So, but because he fouled, he had 2 expected touchdowns. So, that clearly doesn't jive. And those are things, if you can kind of tweak those to do that better if you're doing it really well. But that's a really good point to bring up, and sometimes can make the guys who have been getting unlucky look even unluckier than they have been in reality.
Yeah, that's just something I've started looking at a lot more this year, and just kind of, if somebody's opportunity looks kind of screwy high, I'll start kind of trying to dig into, well, what exactly happened in that game? Was there a reason why like that, or was it, or were they actually just getting that many opportunities on different drives or different sets of downs or whatever?
And just to follow up, this is a little bit of DFS and a little bit of season long. What contests have you been in this year? Have you been focusing on the DFS, or have you're also in with the best ball tournaments? And how do you go about choosing which contest to enter on a weekly basis?
Yeah, so I mean, right now my focus is mostly on DFS, but in the off season, I'm slanted a little bit more towards best ball than straight redraft, just because I know I'm going to be so busy with DFS in season that it's hard to manage all the teams on wires. I co-manage quite a few teams. Do have an FFPC main event team with Sylvan Levitan that we streamed for the established to run listeners, and I think we're like third in points right now. We have a team kind of similar to your guys' team where we're not running so hot on record. That's a team where we're desperate at running back though, so some of these wire additions we'll be looking at this week. So I like playing the FFPC leagues, NFFC, and for best ball, I mostly play on Underdog, but I really enjoyed playing on FFPC, like their tournament. I thought just the way the ADPs fell in that tournament were a little bit better for me, the way that my style of play is suited. So I'm excited to see how some of those teams turn out. But for DFS each week, I generally play a little bit more on DraftKings than FanDuel, and some of it's just honestly like personal preference. Like I just like the scoring system better. I feel like I have a better grasp on it with the full point per reception and the bonuses at 100 yards. I think my brain can wrap around both the correlation side of things a little bit more, and I think if you have an edge in projections, having stuff be full point per reception and those bonuses make it a little bit less touchdown heavy than FanDuel, which makes it slightly more predictable. But I like playing both sites, and generally, regardless of site, I like to play the smaller field tournaments, tournaments with 200 to 400 people, sometimes even less. That's kind of my bread and butter. One, I think it's more profitable because people play like just their cash games in there. So if you're kind of thoughtful in what you're doing, you can get a pretty good edge because you know what the ownerships are going to be. If people are just rolling their cash games in there, people sometimes make the mistake of not being contrarian enough in those types of tournaments. So from that standpoint, I think there's an edge. But then just from an entertainment standpoint, you legitimately have a shot to win a tournament if you play those 17 weeks all year round, and you're just going to run yourself into a sweat sooner or later. If you're playing in 1,000, 10,000, 40,000 man tournaments, the odds are against you from actually pulling down a tournament, which has nothing to do with your expected ROI or anything. Your ROI could be the same in those tournaments, but just for me, I find it more gratifying to actually have that sweat once or twice throughout the season.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And also, just kind of knowing, what your style is I think an important point. Because if you're playing those medium-sized tournaments, like it's a massive tournament, you can outsmart yourself, I would think, on that. And then, like you said, if you're just playing it like a cash game, you're probably not getting edgy enough. You're not getting contrarian enough.
Yeah, I saw a question David asked if ETR was going to do something for the FFPC playoffs tourney. Yeah, we'll definitely do something for the FFPC playoffs. I don't know if you guys play the playoff challenge there. I love that. Like that. That's my jam, that type of game. Like, I can go full galaxy brain on that, like trying to figure out, because it's like this beautiful cross section of season long and DFS to an extent, and figuring out what the field's going to roster, what percentage these guys at, and kind of figuring out how the playoff bracket's going to work out. Like you can get on a game that's set up seemingly really simple, you can get a few levels deep unique on it.
Yeah, it's fun, man. It's like multiple Rubik's cubes, right? It's also the first thing I ask Alex every year when we renegotiate the partnership is, you'll hook me up with that entrance into the playoff. we get our entrance in every year. I mean, the entrance for our football guys is not as great, right, guys? So far. But the playoff one is super fun. It's different layers, right? And anything you guys can get help wise, obviously on our show, we'll have some guests that can help you guys out, but check out what they do over there at ETR, because it's always goodness on there. We'll try to address some of the questions as we go through this. Dan, I'm going to pass you I'm going to let you take that last question. Before I pass it to you, I want to talk about, we talked about establish the edge, and you recently did a mock SuperFlex redraft of the 2021 rookie class. What were your biggest takeaways from that, and from that activity or that episode, and who are your biggest risers?
Yeah, I mean, biggest risers, we did this episode before Michael Carter had this huge role come up. So we kind of missed on him. Like that would have been a pretty big riser. As far as stuff we learned, like just at the top of the draft for Superflex, it's still so intriguing. I think there might be good buy opportunities on these quarterbacks that probably fetched a huge price in the rookie redraft. And I know one of the biggest pitfalls for me in season long this year is I have relied a little bit too much on, hoping Justin Fields and Trey Lance would start and realize their upside. And, it hasn't come to fruition, which has been frustrating. But I think that makes those guys like really good buy low in Superflex Dynasty, where, I mean, you're not going to get them cheap. Like people aren't panicking, but I think it might be like they might make them available when they may have not otherwise. And I still think those guys, like looking to next year and beyond, could be top 10 quarterback options for a handful of years. And it's just crazy up top, the talent, with Kyle Pitts if you're in tight end premium and Jamar Chase. And then you got Najee Harris. I think it was Ryan McDowell from Dynasty League Football was tweeting, arguably this rookie class has the Dynasty RB1, wide receiver 1, and tight end 1, which is pretty insane to think about. The receivers, I think, all look good. Like the receivers you took at the 1-2 turn, I think everybody should be patient with. I think Rashad Bateman is going to carve out a nice role, and it's nice seeing Baltimore. We were saying how it's funny. Generally, you'd think a guy who was hurt and didn't play, his stock would drop quite a bit. But for Bateman, ironically, it's kind of risen just because of the success we've seen Baltimore have passing the football. We've seen them be more aggressive. The attempts are there. And like that was kind of the big concern was, can he carve out a big enough role? And we saw Sammy Watkins have a 20% target share and enough team volume to get there that if he can, join that spot, he doesn't really have to beat out Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown. Whereas going into the year, I sort of thought that was going to have to be a prerequisite for him to hit any sort of upside.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, you're talking to at least a couple of good Bateman fans here as well on this show. Yeah. We've been very high on him and preaching patience. So we're excited to see how the second half unfolds for him. But yeah, it's I thought it was kind of funny that, as you noticed, we do have that top running back, wide receiver, tight end in Dynasty, and they came from a class that was supposedly really, not all that great. We did think it was pretty nice at the top, but I don't think anybody expected it to be quite this nice so far. But that's also the Dynasty community. We sometimes, try to anoint people a little too fast. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it sits by the end of the year. And I do think you're right with, the opportunity on the quarterbacks. I think the prices on them are coming down a little bit right now.
It's also just kind of crazy, the nuance of each specific rookie draft class. Like this one, so top heavy, right? Like the top 6 picks. If you had one of those picks, you almost couldn't go wrong, assuming you're being patient with Lance and Fields and the other guys are all producing. But, the back end, looks a little shakier. Zach Wilson struggling. Mac Jones is in there and starting. He's fine. But there's a clear drop off, I guess is my point. Whereas, the year we had CeeDee Lamb and Swift and Justin Herbert, it was pretty juicy, like almost the entire first round. And those first round picks, man, the value sometimes can be, it's pretty volatile on them.
Yep, for sure. So let's jump into one other thing that you've been looking at is the ProE. Can you explain to us what ProE is and how you're using that to help yourself out on your own DFS and fantasy, and how can the rest of us use it as well? Because I like the concept here.
Yeah, it's PROE stands for pass rate over expectation. I used to have my own model for this. Now I mainly am using NFL Fast R. They have open source data. Each play they mark as what the expected pass is on the play, and that's based on the team's down and distance, the time remaining in the game, what their win probability is at that, the score differential. It takes like all those factors and basically says, your expected pass, the average team in this exact situation would pass, 55% of the time. So if you throw on that down, like that's, plus 45 percentage points, and then you do that for every single play, it gives you a good idea of which teams are most aggressive actually throwing the ball relative to their game script, what that would indicate. And it's a little bit nicer than just looking at, first, people look at like situation neutral pass rate, which is okay, but that doesn't always take into account the exact score, time remaining in the game, and you get less plays out of that. This is applicable to every play. So it's just a really good metric to find out how teams are calling plays from a passing perspective. And the reason why that's important is game script can dictate so much what happens with pass rate that it can look like very unstable over the course of the season. So if we know what teams are doing relative to game script, and then we know what the projected game script is going to be, like based on the Vegas line for that week, we start to get a better idea of how often a team's going to throw the ball than if we just looked at their previous pass rate. So that's why I find it pretty useful. And over the course of the season, it can be useful too. You can see here Cincinnati's pass rate in the red zone's huge. And then for this one's for all situations, not just in the red zone. It's in the red zone and out of the red zone.
Yeah, sorry.
Some of the
things lagging a bit, so I apologize.
Oh yeah, no worries. But you can see if you go to the overall one, like Tampa Bay and KC are just crushing it. So like DFS, for example, people sometimes are like too worried about game script. Like, is the quarterback going to throw? It's a 14-point spread. But we know Tom Brady by this, chart is going to throw regardless of the situation. Whereas, you get another team like Cleveland down there, they have a very negative pass rate over expectation. If they get into a game where they're up a lot, it's going to be run after run after run. So it can be pretty useful in that sense. And I do like to look at trends over the course of the season. The Bengals, I was really high on coming into the year because I thought they would have a neutral to high pass rate of expectation, and they took it pretty easy on Burrow to start the year, and it was low. But if you see their chart, like they're kind of in the middle right now about neutral, but their first 4 games were all negative. Their last 4 games were all positive. So they're trending in the right direction for sure, like really high on this Bengals passing attack.
Yeah, I think that's one of the important things is to just, not only look at the snapshot of where we're at right now, but, what is the trend? Where are they heading? Because teams are always kind of changing their identity as they move through the season. Defenses play them differently, or they play defenses of a different style, or you move into kind of the late part of the year and they're playing more divisional rivals, things like that. Those can all influence it as well. So it's nice to see from week to week how it's changing.
I think Tennessee will look a little different on that chart pretty shortly, I would imagine.
And that's another way to use it too, is like we know Tennessee's going to look different. AJ Brown's already, bounced back and crushed, a couple of straight games. Like you're just understanding that, that they're so far from neutral. Like what happens if they're even just neutral? We're going to see, a lot more volume in the passing game. Hopefully Julio can get back, and I think the upside on Tannehill, Julio, AJ Brown is pretty massive rest of season, as long as losing Henry doesn't affect their efficiency too much.
What's the biggest surprise there for you, Mike, when you look at those? Is it Washington? Like sorry, man, I'm asking you the question. I don't even have it up, but
no, that's all good. To start this season, it was actually let me pull.
I'm gonna pull it up. I was so proud of myself for getting the thing on the screen. Everything went so smooth, and of course, just too good to be true. I got it coming.
We want to test your memory of the chart.
Yeah.
There it is.
So biggest surprise, man. I've been surprised at the Raiders this year in a lot of regards. One has been the aggressiveness of their pass rate, which kind of ties into, I really thought their offense would regress and score less points. And, we've seen Carr really go down the field. So I've been impressed with them. And then also both LA teams, we've seen, what McVay's going to do with a quarterback he trusts. They're third in pass rate over expectation. I think they were like neutral last year. And then in the red zone, they were crazy run heavy last year. So that one, and it's awesome to see what the Chargers are doing with Herbert and Staley there. You bring in a defensive-minded coach, sometimes you're not so sure, but they've been ramping up the pace. They're running a lot of plays per game. Their pass rate over expectations great. So whether you're in Dynasty or Redraft, I know they just had an off week, but it's really looking bright for the Chargers. And I know Mike Williams was one of those players that I was off on in the offseason. Like I was a little too lower than I should have been, but like very quickly changed my mind on him. And this is one of those things that kind of helps you early in the season to maybe like make your decisions a little quicker, whether a guy's fluky or not, was just understanding this Chargers offense was operating differently and was going to throw so much and how that would impact Mike Williams.
Yep, that definitely makes sense.
Guys, smash the like, smash the subscribe. Just a bunch of goodness coming out. I mean, we tried to hit the strategy here, talking analytics, giving you the edge, looking macro. We're going to kind of narrow it down now. We're going to focus. We talked about how juicy this week is in good ways and bads. Some bad news coming out of Vegas this week with Henry Ruggs. I'm sure most of you by now have seen the pictures or have seen the headlines and the details. Obviously, you don't want to hear any of that. It's 2 lives unnecessarily just damaged, obviously, and just wasted. And it's just a tragedy because it can be avoided easily. Uber it or whatever it is. I'm sure these guys have different options. So guys, it's not worth it, guys. No drinking and driving out there. But looking on the fantasy side of things, Mike, I'll go to you. Like, how does this change things? Are we looking at guys like Bryan Edwards in a new light with kind of an opening of the targets now? And how do you see this changing the landscape in the Vegas offense?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely concerns over the Vegas offense if they're going to be able to operate. I mentioned them as a team that I was impressed with this year, and part of that's the field stretching ability of Ruggs, the ability to not only make plays for himself but stretch the field and clear out for some of the more underneath routes for Renfrow and Waller. But taking a flyer on Bryan Edwards probably makes sense as a guy that has maybe a little bit more athletic upside there in terms of his size and speed profile. I know he's struggled more so. I know a lot of people like JJ Zachariason, who's really sharp in the industry, was really high on Bryan Edwards as a prospect, and he's going to see more opportunity. He's been out on the field, just hasn't been able to earn the targets, but now you would think more targets would be headed his way.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how they've used him, because it's like they just kind of go to him in streaks. They won't look his way for 3 quarters, and all of a sudden they're looking his way in the 4th quarter all the time. One of the things I'm doing on that is Waller hasn't really done a whole lot for the past several weeks. So definitely in Dynasty, I'm throwing out a few feelers on that, see if anybody's giving up on Waller, or at least allowing him to go for a mild discount. I don't think anybody's going to truly give up on him, but Waller, I think, definitely stands to gain as much as anyone in this spot. What do you think, Theo?
Yeah, it's just crazy how this news just comes at you so quickly. I agree with Mike. I think that this could be a real struggle for the Raiders. I don't see anybody who really can, take the top off of a defense like Ruggs. Edwards, they take some shots with, but it's just not the same kind of speed. I think Hunter Renfrow is the sneaky ad for me. I think he's a nice buy low. I think they're going to become a little bit more low ADOT in their approach, and I think it will be a benefit for Waller. I agree with you on that, Dan. Waller's had, I think it's like 1 top 8 tight ends a week all season long, and I think that they're going to have to lean on him more. So if anybody benefits from this, it's Renfrow and Waller. But I do think it hurts Carr, and I think it hurts the overall offense, and in terms of just what they can do in terms of going over the top.
Sorry, I had myself on mute. The Coyotes are howling tonight. They're just I thought they were piercing through the mic here. Guys, again, not the best of news, but Derrick Henry getting injured. We touched on it a bit with Tennessee. Obviously, he's just a beast and a force to be reckoned with, whether it's fantasy or football. What do you think happens here? And I'll go back to you, Mike. You listen and you hear one end of the spectrum, it's McNichols, the pass catching ability. And then you've got, AP coming in, the GOAT, coming in to take over the GOAT spot. and maybe volume is kind of the deciding factor. So when it comes to volume and kind of the pass catching or the role, which way do you lean, and which way are you going to lean when it comes to this backfield in Tennessee?
Yeah, that's something I got to get figured out for my waiver wire bids.
I'm not alone then.
It's tough. It's generally I like to side with the pass catcher just because there's usually a little bit more upside there. I mean, you kind of what's happening with Michael Carter in the Jets. If you get a lot of checkdowns plus the rush roll, it can really add up in a quick way and give you a ceiling that you're not going to get if you're a pure rusher. With that said, them bringing in AP so quickly, I don't know, it's just tough for me to see them relying on McNichols between the tackles. So I could see a situation where AP's getting, 15 carries a game and seeing the red zone roll. It seems kind of crazy to be talking about AP just coming in off the streets and getting 15 carries a game, right? Like at his age, I was stunned, man. I looked at the last 3 years, he scored 20 touchdowns the last 3 seasons. So it's wild. So I do think, so I kind of slightly actually lean the AP side of things just because I think that touchdown upside, I don't see either guy having a huge ceiling. So I want that goal line roll, that equity by the end zone. So I do slightly prefer AP. Don't mind even taking, a full flyer on Donta Foreman for super cheap if you miss out, and AP and McNichols end up going for big bucks.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think that AP is gonna go for a ton of fab in a lot of leagues. I think for the reasons Mike talked about. I mean, they brought him in. I doubt that they would have that AP would have agreed to come out of retirement essentially if there wasn't an expectation that he was going to get the early down roll and a chance at the goal line roll. But I'm intrigued by McNichols. He's a very good pass catcher. I think you also look at it as it's crunch time. In a lot of leagues, you've got to win the next few weeks in order to make the playoffs. You're not going to get a lot of AP this week. This week will be a McNichols week. So you get one at least high volume week guaranteed. And then moving forward, I think that there's a chance that McNichols will carve himself out a nice role. I think the offense is going to have to change, and it's going to have to change pretty quickly. They were, relying so hard on Derrick Henry. I mean, if you just look at the attempts, the rushing attempts are insane. The yardage alone is nuts. I mean, he's got 300 yards more than anybody in football as a rusher. But I think he's like 100 more carries than the next guy. So it's going to have to really change. A.J. Brown is going to get as much work as he can handle. Julio, like you said, has a great opportunity. But I think it's going to be a different kind of offense, and a pass-catching back should have a nice role in it. I think it could end up being a little like Arizona, where AP's sort of the Connor role, and we get McNichols in an Edmonds role. So I'm going to lean with the guy I think I can get cheaper on Fab this week in most leagues with McNichols. But it's definitely AP is going to be the guy that you're going to see getting higher bids in most leagues, in my opinion. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I'm kind of at the same place. I mean, let's just acknowledge it. AP is a freak of nature. The guy is just, I'm sure he's still in incredible shape. He was last year. He has been every year. Guys like him and Frank Gore up until recently. It's like, and we don't even know for sure if Frank Gore and Derek Gore are actually different people. So
he resurrected, man. You didn't know that? That's
right.
He saw Mahomes and he's like, I'm coming back, baby. Different name.
So yeah. And I do think, AP is a little bit slower into the hole than he used to be. He's, he needs a little bit of a bigger hole. He needs it to be open just a little bit longer than he used to. He doesn't get up to full speed as quick. At least that's what I was seeing last year. But he's definitely still got the long speed. So, if he breaks into the open field, he could definitely be gone. But I do think that what you were saying, Theo, about McNichols and AP possibly having a Edmonds and Connor type roles and relationship is, that's a decent chance. And so I'm kind of going into it with fairly even bids on both. I'm way low on Fab in a lot of leagues, so I don't expect to win him in too many spots. But and I'll definitely be doing the old Donta Foreman for $2 or whatever as a stopgap. But I think it's worth just getting whoever you can get in this backfield and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm with Dan though. Even though I have convinced myself that I prefer AP to McNichols, it's tight. Like I'm probably going to have my bids are going to be very even, and as a result, if AP is going to be the one that goes for more, that's fine. I'll let him go. I'll take McNichols for cheaper, or the free Foreman flyer.
Like we say here often, guys, and we say it, we don't know shit. We think we know so much. So because we don't know shit, you sprinkle a bit here and a bit there, you got to hit, right? It's I like that approach, Theo, with getting a piece here and there wherever you can. And, we look at another backfield in Philly and, again, kind of looking at the pass catcher type back, and then the goal line volume kind of guy. And I don't know if this was just a pitch to kind of get Howard on the radar before the trade deadline, but is there a decision here, Mike, with Boston and Jordan with regards to this backfield? Are you maybe not fooled by the JH comeback and just sticking to Scott, or which way are you leaning in this backfield?
Yeah, definitely prefer Scott over Jordan Howard. I know. I mean, they each kind of crazy. They each scored 2 touchdowns. It's kind of crazy that Kenny Gainwell has been stealing touchdowns from Miles Sanders all year long, and then Miles goes out. We play Gainwell in DFS, and we get 4 touchdowns from Boston Scott and Jordan Howard. So had to get that tilt off a little bit, but I think Scott's the one you want. I know Levitan had tweeted it was basically like Gainwell was staying in his normal role. It like really didn't change. And then Boston Scott came in and took the Miles Sanders role with Jordan Howard mixing in from some goal line and some straight rush work. Howard, I believe, didn't see a target in that game. We saw Boston Scott see some targets and also get the goal line work, splitting with Howard there. So Scott's the guy that just has more upside because he's going to be able to contribute in the passing game. I don't think Howard's ever going to be more than, like a 5 to 8 carry with some goal line work type guy, and that's just not going to get it done.
Yeah. I think that it's Scott. I'll take the L for Gainwell. I wrote about him in a waiver wire column on Player Profiler. I figured it would be a big Gainwell week, but I couldn't have been more wrong. It seems like Sirianni just views Gainwell as what he is, and you're not going to see any increase. I think Scott, had about twice as many snaps as Howard, and they seem very confident in Scott. So it's definitely Scott between the two of them.
So, this is why I like best ball, because, best ball, if you're right for a while, if you end up being right, then you don't lose it. You can't lead yourself astray. Like I have a bunch of best ball teams at Boston Scott because I thought he was probably going to hold the role over Gainwell for most of the season. So I figured, I'll take Scott. He's going cheaper than Gainwell, and why not? So I do have some good exposure to Scott. I did have some in my season long, and unfortunately, those shares all went bye long before this whole mess happened. So I'm stuck trying to reacquire Scott in the league or two where he's still out on the waiver wire.
It was also just a weird game. I mean, 41-0.
True.
It's not the typical script we're seeing from Philadelphia this year. So they ran the ball so many times as a result that I think that's inflating the Howard numbers more than anything. Where a game against the Chargers this week where it's it's a tight spread, a little bit more back and forth affair. I could see I could see Howard getting cut out a decent bit and Gainwell getting back to being pretty relevant, despite the disappointing week.
Theo, the people want to know.
I'm actually drinking a seltzer. It's Whole Foods owned, so it's nothing non-alcoholic over here. More exciting would be what Dan's drinking right now.
I'm fumbling trying to find the air horn, Dan. I was trying to find it there on Theo. His face is beat red right now.
Yeah, the secret's out. The secret's out. I enjoy seltzer during the day. Learn something new every week.
There it is, brother. Guys, keep the questions, the comments coming in the chat. You guys are killing it. Wheeler, ML. I mean, the goodness keeps coming. Kyle's money's in here as usual. Keep it coming, guys. Smash the like, smash the subscribe. Mike Leone being super generous with his time. Do you have a heart out, Mike? I always forget to ask this before we come on. I like to put you on the spot in front of the peeps, you know.
No, I'm good.
All right, cool. Try not to keep you too long, but no, man, we appreciate all the goodness tonight. And you know, we're talking about the waiver wire. We've touched on a couple of backfields. You know, I kind of had it at the end with regards to the Jets, and maybe we throw Mike White in here or that conversation with the quarterback situation out there in New York. But anyone else we haven't talked about, Mike, on the waiver wire, that's a target that you're considering that you think people should consider?
Yeah, I think Taysom Hill, if you're in SuperFlex leagues, makes a lot of sense. I mean, or even in one quarterback leagues, depending on who your quarterback is, he was just guys that run like Taysom Hill run have a really nice combination of fantasy floor and ceiling. I mean, there were weeks last year where we had him as a top 5 raw projected quarterback. You know, I don't know if he has quite the same upside this year as last year. The team has been pretty boring, for the lack of a sophisticated word there. It's been pretty dull. You know, they've been slow paced. They've been running a ton, but because of Hill's goal line role, I think he's a good stash. I don't know if he's going to start this week. It sounds like he's really close to returning, but I know the concussion hit him pretty hard, and I don't know if he's been practicing, so you might not get him to start right away, but there's some long-term upside there. And I did notice too, like in one of my FFPC leagues, like Trey Lance got dropped, and I've got, you know, Jalen Hurts going during his bye week's going to be during what's the FFPC playoffs. So, you know, it's not a bad idea as you get to the end of this season to get your second quarterback. A lot of times I'm just carrying one to just keep those running back stashes on my bench as long as possible. But as we get towards the end of the season, and depending when the bye weeks are, you know, there's some quarterback stashes I'm thinking about.
Yeah, Tyrod Taylor is another one that could end up being pretty good. I mean, he was pretty legit to start the season, and so if they go back to him, you know, I got a couple spots where I've got Brady on bye this week, and I picked up Tyrod and stashed him. I might not be able to use him. I'm probably going to have to pick up yet another quarterback on, you know, Friday or Saturday if in fact Tyrod doesn't look like he's going to play. But you know, that's one I'd roll the dice with, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, Mike makes a great point about looking at guys who were cut. It sounds very simple, but you know, when you play high volume, like a lot of listeners that we have, you know, guys trying to manage, you know, 10 plus teams, you might go look for the McNichols and the APs, you know, maybe the Carlos Hydes in every single league just to add them, and you kind of overlook the guys that might be there. This is a good week to go back and really look and see who's available. You only have a couple more weeks to crank out waivers and really grind here, so might as well take a little longer this week if you have it. I know in the main event team that I split with Andrew Schellenberg, I know Dan Arnold is available, which was very surprising to me that he'd be available. And it's the only FFPC league that I'm in, and it happens to be a main event that he's available. So I think that was a great point by Mike. Just go take a look. I think that this week it's Devontae Parker is available in a lot of home leagues. You know, he came back last week. He had 11 targets. I think that, you know, there's no reason he can't do it again this week against Houston. And he's the kind of guy that people sleep on that can end up having a really nice end to the season. And then I think tight end wise, for a lot of people that play in home leagues, it's a really nice week to add someone. You know, we talk about Wheeler will probably have a comment here, but I talk about Freiermuth every week on the GOAT District. But Freiermuth is happening. Dan Arnold is available in a lot of home leagues, and I think you can kind of really, really cover up your tight end spot with one of those guys potentially. You know, both of those guys should see a decent target share, and I think we're going to reach a point in the season where, you know, Dan Arnold is a top 10 tight end every single week. There's no reason to see him losing volume. He's in a big role, and you know, they're leaning on him. So it's a sneaky week. You know, you have the big names, but you could also add you know, potential streamer guys. You know, Carlos Hyde would be kind of a fun streamer this week. If James Robinson misses, I think he'd have potentially 20 touches this week. So it's a very busy week on the waiver wire for sure.
Theo, give a quick plug, man. We got your article on the screen here. Some serious goodness in there. I had to go, Mike. I recommend. I went and checked out Theo's thoughts on some of these guys this week, just because, like you said, you look at these guys and you're like, I don't know which way to go. But Theo has some good insight on the weekly. I know we talked about a waiver wire show on the channel, and we will get to that. But Theo, remind the peeps where they can find your goodness to help them out.
Yeah, you can find my waiver wire watch list every week on Player Profiler. Ray Mars is my editor, and he does a great job of getting it out pretty early on every single Tuesday. I usually turn it in. Last night I had to write something about Derek Gore, who apparently exists as a human. I didn't know until yesterday. And we go pretty deep on the go.
You and everyone else.
We have not talked about Derek Gore. So Derek Gore made the article, so it kept me up a little later, but that it comes out every single Tuesday, and yeah, I appreciate that, JD. We're putting out some good content.
And there's the tweet that Mike was talking about, Adam Levitan. I was trying to find it, just breaking down the RB touches, like basically the first 3 quarters versus the last quarter, which is interesting.
That's just why I didn't myself realize the
difference.
Those Gainwell touches don't make any sense. Like, he somehow gets worse as Sanders goes out. And sometimes, what were you saying? Like, we don't know shit. Like, it's just crazy, But yeah, I'll second the recommendation on Theo's article. Glad to see you talking up Devontae Parker, because having to slide him in very quickly into the ETR main event team starting lineup this week due to buys. So let's get it, Devontae.
Yeah, that's. I think that's a good one. I think he's going to stick. And what was interesting to me was Gesicki. His targets went way down when Parker came back on. So I don't know if that was just a 1-game sample, but Gesicki's been crushing. So I hope that's not the case for my Gesicki teams, but it speaks volumes for how Tua likes Parker. So we'll see.
Dan, do you have anyone we haven't talked about on waivers?
Man, you guys have hit pretty much everybody.
Everything.
It's I don't have anybody other than just like the complete head scratcher type guys that if you're super desperate, but. So, yeah,
okay.
I think we've hit them all right. I think, do we want to take a look at any of the questions in the chat?
Drop one of the questions, and then we'll head to Denver for a little chat.
All right. So we got one from our buddy Srikanth. Just one roster spot after I picked Hyde and AP for free. Has to choose from Brian Edwards, Michael Ayuk, Elijah Moore, Agnew, Van Jefferson, Ty Johnson, or Jordan Howard.
Wow, it's a long list.
So I think he's asking for one. He's asking for one wide receiver and one running back here. I think that's what that means, right?
Okay.
So it's pick one wide receiver and then either Ty Johnson or Jordan Howard. Mike.
Yeah. I mean, depending on the shape of your team, I'd probably want Ayuk. Just his snaps were way back up last game. We saw that happen earlier in the season, and it didn't mean anything. But this was a dude that was getting a lot of steam in the offseason, really good breakout profile. He has the most ceiling out of all those guys, I think, pretty clearly. So I'd want him stashed as long as, you're not absolutely having to start him right away. And then Ty Johnson, I think, over Jordan. I really don't think Jordan Howard's going to be a thing. I could be wrong on that, but I think last week was as good as it's going to get for Jordan Howard.
There's a flex for the trade deadline.
Yep. Okay.
Theo, what do you think?
I think Ty Johnson is a no-brainer over Jordan Howard. Ty Johnson seeing targets in back-to-back weeks, and he's putting up stats with Michael Carter's breakout. So I think that's a good sign for him. And Mike White seems to be a check down specialist, so it's definitely Ty Johnson. The wide receivers, it's a really hard choice. I wouldn't mind having any of those guys. I agree. Ayuk is the potentially best addition here. He had his best statistical game last week in terms of snaps and routes run and all the metrics we like to see. I'm also intrigued, obviously, by Van Jefferson. I'm a big fan of his. I think that he could be a guy we're starting to flex every week as the season winds down. And Elijah Moore could finally be happening. I think that the Jets if there's going to be any kind of a moral victory as the season moves along, I think it would be really good for the Jets front office and for Saleh to see Elijah Moore, become a thing as the season ends and have a little steam heading into next season. He's had 7 touches in back-to-back weeks. So I'm okay with any of those guys, to be honest, Shrikant. I think that Ayuk, if everything being equal, I go Ayuk. But this might be I think the cheapest guy option. What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I think I'd probably go Ayuk first. Mecole is definitely interesting just because, obviously in games where Kelsey's not doing much, Mecole is almost by definition doing a little bit more. Agree, Elijah Moore, it'd be nice to see him break out. I'm almost a little bit more worried about what happens when Zach Wilson gets back, because he just doesn't fit the offense as well as what Mike White seemed to do. Agnew, that's a guy you can pick up on the waiver wire any week. Van Jefferson, same deal. His upside is going to be capped by the fact that there's so many mouths to feed above him. Brian Edwards, you're also kind of betting on him coming from way back on the target totem pole. So I'd probably go. I'd probably go Ayuk, Mecole, or Elijah Moore.
Sybil, for me, man, I'm buying the dip. Ayuk. Mike talked about guys that lose value for whatever reason, and the younger the player, the quicker they lose that value, they're just a bigger opportunity for me to jump on and grab a guy like Ayuk for that upside. I mean, look, that offense is struggling. They're going through some challenges. I love me some Deebo Samuel, as you guys know, my most owned player in Dynasty. But at the same time, this offense is still figuring itself out. And Ayuk, like we said, is about upside. I think Edwards is interesting with what's opened up there, because I think if we grabbed Edwards coming into the season, we thought there was potential there, and now the opportunity kind of matches up and aligns, and you think that the opportunity is there now. So I think it always depends on also, again, what Mike talked about. It depends on your roster, right? Are you looking for a guy you want to plug in this week? Or are you looking for a guy that he's your 4th, 5th, 6th receiver or player that you're adding? And Ty Johnson, I think, is the no-brainer there, as we've all said. I want to go to Denver, guys, before we go to another question in the chat. Big trade with LA, but you're seeing 2 franchises going in different directions. I mean, the Rams have I want to say, like, I love their style as a franchise. I'm all about the all-in, play for today type of thing, especially the way the NFL is and the components they have. So maybe touch on that, and maybe touch on Denver going in another direction, capitalizing on this opportunity to get a second and a third. Mike, what do you think about the trade, and how does this fit in how you approach these 2 offenses moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, the Rams at this point, they're so far all in that it's like I have a dynasty team where, like, I'm so far all in that, like, I get to a point where I almost don't even care about the future picks, because it's like once I crater, there's no help. Nothing's going to stop the crater. I kind of feel like that's the way with the Rams. Like, they better win, because once it starts to go south, I don't think there's any coming back from that quickly for them. But yeah, it's a fun trade. I mean, as a fan, like, I think you're certainly excited in the short term to just see what they can do. Like, this is their window. They have to take the chance. I haven't really seen any, like, trade value charts on it or not, but it seemed like okay value. If I'm Denver, the thing that I just can't wrap my head around with Denver is passing on Fields. With the direction that they were going, they kind of knew they were going, and it just seems, and maybe just selfishly, like, I would have loved to see Fields slotted into an offense with Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant as his weapons, as opposed to what he's dealing with in Chicago. But yeah, I am surprised they didn't go Fields in the draft. Drew Lock, I think we pretty much knew that it wasn't happening with him. And then Bridgewater's just, he's fine. He's a solid quarterback, but he's just a stopgap.
Yeah, I mean, The Rams are just they're so all in right now. They're the NFL equivalent to Clark Griswold in Vegas Vacation. They're maxing out every credit card and doing everything they can to get that stack up. They don't care about draft picks, and their social media was trolling everybody with it. They just don't care. They're going to trade for the guys that they can get to win a Super Bowl this year. They certainly look like they can win a Super Bowl this year, and they just picked up Von Miller. So this is very exciting. I think if you're a Rams fan, they're all in, and it's very weird. I agree with Mike. It's very weird the decisions made in Denver. I mean, they're 4-4, and they just came off of a big win against Washington. They're very much, a potential playoff team based on their record, and they're trading away their best defensive player. And this will hurt their entire defense. It's going to really hurt, the secondary to not have Von Miller out there as well. So it's wild. It's great to see the Rams really going for it. I think in a league where people kind of sit on their hands on the trade deadline, it's a little bit refreshing to see a team just say, I'm going for it, pushing the chips in, and going and getting my guy like the Rams did.
Dan, a football show is a pod I'm a fan of, and they're kind of talking. Denver should be kind of applauded here. If you, I know you're, and I direct this to you, Dan, because you're the contract guy on the channel when it comes to these players. And I mean, Von Miller, I believe 32 contract is up. Is it end of this year or next year?
I'm not sure on that.
I know it's one or the other. So, I mean, is it that bad of a move if you don't think that your team, even though you get into the playoffs, maybe they just don't think they can actually compete in the AFC with some of these bigger teams that we're seeing right now making runs?
Yeah, and really, I mean, it kind of comes down to getting those picks. If you think you need to reload, the picks are going to be more valuable than a guy who's going to be 33 years old next year, and he is an unrestricted free agent next year, so they're getting something out of him. Yeah. So this makes all kinds of sense if Denver is just taking an internal scout and they're saying, we just don't have the horses this year. We're going to have to, try to load up and do better next year. But how wild is the NFC right now? I mean, you got the Rams pushing their chips in, and it's not like they're the only one-loss team in the NFC. I mean, there's the Packers, the Cardinals, the Cowboys, the Rams, and then the Bucks are one back at 6-2. So that's, to me, that's a lot of swagger the Rams are showing by pushing their chips in, saying, even though this is a loaded field, we're gonna try it. We think we can do it. So kudos to them for that.
Yeah, we're starting to see the horses that are going to make a run here down the second half and the final stretch. If we go to KC, we saw him last night. The offense, the struggle, the Giants. Do you guys have any worries, Mike? Are you worried at all as a fantasy player if you're holding some of these guys? I mean, Tyreek Hill is, Dan, you want to talk about narrow target trees. Doesn't get narrower than that, especially when Kelsey decides to take a night off. But Mike, do you have any concerns or is there an opportunity here to maybe buy some of these guys?
I would say going into last week, I had zero concern with Kansas City and their offense, but that game Monday night was pretty brutal, home game against the Giants. I mean, the yards per attempt for Mahomes has been down pretty poorly. It seems like a lot of teams are just making them play more of a grinded out style than they're used to. So I'd say there's a hint of concern, but ultimately, I think over the course of the season, we have too much of a strong prior on Mahomes to really be that concerned. And I guess the biggest one that you might be worried about is Travis Kelce. Is the age model coming for Travis Kelce? Is he 32 or 33 at this point? And I don't know. I think if you have Travis Kelce, probably you don't want to sell low on Travis Kelce and you're keeping him. And I'm generally the guy that at times probably tends to underreact more so than overreact. So I'd be more likely to buy low on Travis Kelce than panic sell him at this point. It seems like it's just a bad stretch of games, though. I don't know. I don't know how much stock to put into, we've seen Mahomes' attempts way up, but the yards, I mean, we've seen, I'm looking at his game log right now, 4 games this year under 6 yards per attempt, which is kind of insane when you look at his historical track record. One of the things that's been so absurd about Mahomes is he just has like 0 bad games, and now we've got a few of them. So as you can tell, I'm like waffling a little bit on whether or not we should be concerned here, because like talent wise there's no concern, but we've also had some outcomes from Mahomes that are a little bit on the extreme side that have happened a few times that had never really happened before.
I before I let the other two kind of jump in, I just, obviously you want to pick your DFS brain. Does that open the opportunity more this year versus previous years with KC as an option going into each weekend because they haven't been as dominant? Whereas before, I feel like everybody was kind of building around, Mahomes and Hill. Whereas now I feel like it's probably more spread, right? That goodness. And maybe it's a better option for that reason, or am I wrong?
No, I think you're right, where we might get an ownership discount this weekend. And again, this is where sometimes my DFS brain and my seasonal brain might go in different directions. Like season long, I'm taking this long view, and it makes me kind of ask, a tougher question over what the threat level or concern for Kansas City should be. Whereas for DFS, I'm kind of just trusting the numbers, where I know I'm in our projections for ETR, I'm weighting the more recent performance like a little bit heavier than the performance that came before that. So I'm taking into account that Mahomes has had a few bad games, but I kind of trust the data that we've built up that it's not going to overreact. It's going to regress him appropriately. And I'm just kind of trust those numbers. I'm not going to go, oh, they look shaky. I'm going to kind of see, like, I'm going to take in the new data. I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm going to use it, but then sort of like what the machine spits out, so to speak. That makes it sound a little bit more simplistic than it is, but it really is a fun spot for DFS. This game against Green Bay could turn into a bit of a shootout.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to me, it just, on a more visceral level, it just kind of seems like Mahomes just doesn't have quite the same level of confidence. And he's off on his deep throws more than we've seen him be before, but part of what he's done in past years is just, he's fearless in launching those deep throws and all that. And some of it's probably his protection. I don't think he trusts his line as much. Some of it's just the way that the opposing defenses are playing him. They're sagging back a lot more. They're not giving him as many open avenues down deep. So, I think it's a little bit of everything, but right now I think probably maybe one of the most important things is it's just kind of shaking his confidence a little bit. And, so he's just not playing the same way with the same style that he has been. For sure, Hill has been bailing him out. And, I think, also Kelsey, if Kelsey's not playing well, then it's really tough on that offense because, it's the passing tree has always been kind of held up by the twin poles of Kelsey and Hill. And when one of those poles collapses, it just makes it a lot tougher.
Yeah, the Monday night was a weird game. It looked like they were going to score a touchdown on the first drive, and there was a deflected interception. It just seems like anything that can be going wrong for Kansas City is going wrong. They got the win last night. It was an important game to win, but it wasn't. They certainly didn't cover. They certainly didn't, leave their fans feeling like everything's right. I like Mike's call on a potential shootout against Green Bay. That is a landmine game for Kansas City. They almost have to win that game. They have Dallas. They have Las Vegas twice, and Vegas, has had good success against them last season. And they have Denver. So they have, 3 division games in Dallas right after this one. So they almost have to get this win in KC against Green Bay. I think that would right a lot of wrongs if they could beat Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay in Kansas City. But they're going to have to play a lot sharper than they did against the Giants. And I do worry, to touch on what Mike said about Kelsey, I also wonder if Kelsey's just been kind of carrying nagging injuries since the preseason. We saw those little preseason reports and he was dealing with injuries. He certainly looked different a few weeks ago than he did last night. He had the fumble, but something didn't look right. I could be totally overreacting to it, but I'll be interested to see if Kelsey can bounce back this weekend. You'd hate to see him slip up, and it's kind of a hard spot in Dynasty because most Kelsey teams are still towards the top of the standings, so it's not really a guy you can sell. So it's a tough spot. But they've a lot of goodwill would come if they could just get a big win this weekend and go over Green Bay.
For sure.
Wins always make everything better, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. In fantasy and in NFL.
Totally. Mike brought up one of my OTCs for tonight. So let's do a quick rapid fire here really quick. Ayuk or A-Rob rest of season? Leone as our guest of honor.
I'm going Ayuk. I don't know how the rapid fire works. Should I be explaining
just
that?
Quick. Yeah, it's just quick. It's perfect. Theo?
Okay.
Gosh, that's a tough one. I will go A-Rob. I don't trust the goodwill towards Ayuk from Shanahan week in, week out.
Dan?
I'm reluctantly going Ayuk. I would rather just lean over the toilet and puke. But
can I take option? Can I take option C, JD? Is there a third option?
Yeah. Before we close this thing out, I just wanted to bring up Jeremy at Pope's FFH puts up the top PPR scoring and skill position players through week 8. As we're kind of through, we're kind of through the halfway point here. Mike, any thoughts on this? You see a guy like Deebo Samuel in the top 4, Cooper Kupp at the top. I know for a fact that not a lot of people had these guys, in this kind of ranking. What are your thoughts? Any opportunities that you see here, whether that's a sell or a buy, like a dynasty wise or in any DFS, redraft, wherever you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're not competing, I could see selling really high on Cooper Kupp in dynasty, just because, as we mentioned, this Rams team is all in, but it's something that could go bad, quicker than we realize in a year or two. And I think at his age right now, you're probably still going to get a really nice price on him. So I could see that as a sell. Jamar Chase, hold on to him at all costs. Do not sell him in dynasty. For redraft, though, it's interesting with Kupp and Samuel. Like, their target shares have been so high and so consistently high that, obviously they're probably not going to finish first and fourth in scoring, but I'm really not that worried about them. I'm not selling Kupp in redraft. I think he is the wide receiver 1 or 2 rest of the season in redraft. I just think it makes sense from a dynasty perspective. And, looking at the running backs on this list, I wonder if you can maybe get DeAndre Swift after a down week. Everybody was hyped when Jamal Williams was out that Swift would have this huge week, but his work in the passing game and the red zone role, I mean, that's what we want to see out of our running backs. So I could really see him emerge, him and Taylor really seem like they could emerge here as being kind of the RB winners down the stretch.
Theo, what are your thoughts, man, on this this top list here with what we've seen so far this year?
Depressing to see Derrick Henry. He keeps having to get back to what Kupp is doing is simply unbelievable. He's outscoring almost every quarterback, let alone skill position player right now. The guy's on fire. He's the kind of guy that if you have him in dynasty, just ride it out because you're going to be in great shape to win the championship with him. We've talked about Deebo Samuel in dynasty. JD and Dan and I have kind of gone over this with a few guests. Is it the time to cash out on Deebo Samuel in dynasty? This is the peak of his value. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy you're going to be drafting in, the top 20 picks of a regular PPR draft next year. There's a chance maybe he does go that high, but we had this conversation with Michael Edelman last week. And we've gone over it a few times on the Go District how it might not feel right, but when you have a chance to trade somebody at their absolute career peak, it's sometimes the correct move. It's a guy with injury history. He's 25 years old. He's not, like Chase. He's not like some 21-year-old. He's certainly not old, but I don't know. He's just performing at such an unbelievable level. He looks so explosive. It would make you almost sick to trade him, but you could get 2 firsts and something from a lot of people in Dynasty right now. What do you think, Dan? Is that crazy?
No, I don't think that's necessarily crazy. I mean, if he's a key cog to your machine for winning, you got to hang on to him. But if you just don't think it's your year, I would definitely be looking to move him. Cooper Kupp is kind of he's basically the 2019 Michael Thomas, the 2021 version of it. So. I'm riding Kupp, all the way through this year. Let's just hope that 2022 goes better for Kupp than 2020 went for Michael Thomas. Yeah, and for the rest of the year, probably fade Derrick Henry. I think that's okay.
The Debo thing's so tough for me because he was someone I had as buy low coming into this year in Dynasty and elsewhere. There's some crazy stat, but if you look at guys that had greater than 2 yards per route run each of the first 2 years of their career, it's like this insane list. It's like Odell Beckham, AJ Green, Julio Jones. Like it's just this crazy, outrageous good list that he's on, and he's doing it again. And like he's just, it doesn't seem like it makes sense, but he keeps producing year in and year out. But at the same time, to Theo's point, like almost any time you can sell somebody at the pinnacle, you got to entertain it. I mean, you got to be level-headed. You just, it's not going to get better than this for Debo. As much as I love him, I think he's really solid. I mean, it is the absolute pinnacle right now. And, if Lance takes over and if Kittle comes back, like you can see some things where I don't think it would go bad for him, but it would soften, he'd go from like elite wide receiver to just like good, solid contributor.
Right, exactly. He could easily become, a little bit more of a Tyler Lockett type, where it's a lot more hit and miss from week to week and, less reliable. So, yeah. And, I've always said, if you've got a player that's sitting at the very top, one of the, top dozen or so players in Dynasty, there's really almost nowhere for them to go but down. So, might as well sell, as long as you're not using them for a current championship run. So, any of my other teams, I tend to sell guys like that.
Agreed, especially, older guys at the running back position. Mm-hmm. But guys, we talk about it often, buy the dips, sell high. You can't really go wrong, especially if you can we talk about pivot all off season. We talk to you guys about trading and Dynasty and pivoting. If you can pivot off of, a Kupp or Samuel and get a guy in a tier that you have similar, or even if it's a tier down and you get something with it on top, you're winning. And the other thing that I think is important to think of when you're making any of these trades, are you trying to build value? Are you in reno mode or in rebuild, or are you trying to win now? Because those are, if you're trying to win now, like we said, guys like Kupp and Debo, stick to them, because you didn't, especially a guy like Debo, you came into the season like Mike said, and you got him at a really nice value, and he's way overproducing expectation. He's the definition of that this season. So hopefully we helped you guys out tonight. Mike, we appreciate all the goodness that you shared with us tonight. Remind the people where they can find all the goodness that you bring to Fantasyland, and anything else you want to give our audience before we shut this down.
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me on. Had a great time. But yeah, second off, if you want to find me, you can find me over at Establish the Run. I do a show with Drew Dinkmeyer each Saturday morning, Establish a Million, looking at DFS tournaments. That's part of the Establish the Run in-season package, and have a free podcast, Establish the Edge, that you can check out. Recording an episode with Rich Rebar of Warren Sharp's website tomorrow. So check that out.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. I'm sure. I'm going to definitely have that one circled.
Mark that down in the calendar, guys. Put that in your schedule for tomorrow. Dan, I mean, tons. I mean, we covered all kinds of stuff tonight. I know when we were putting the show sheet tonight, it's like we could have gone on with another 30 different topics because of all the juiciness going on in Fantasyland and us wanting to pick our guests' brain. But anything else you want to give the piece before we close this out or remind them of?
No, not really much other than, we've kind of been talking about it all, the entire episode, but FFPC, one of the best places to play, any kind of game you want to play, they've got it. So if you're not in the FFPC this year, make sure you bookmark it. Make sure you hit us up here on the GOAT District. We'll see if we can get you some freebies and get you in there next year.
For sure. Theo, buddy, another solid serious booking tonight with the guests. You're just smashing the VIPs, bringing in the best in the game. And Mike is just another example of that. So we appreciate that. And remind the piece, man, whether it's the waiver wire goodness or anything else you want to share.
Yeah, so it's been a great run of guests. Mike was fantastic tonight. We have the top two leaders of the Scott Fish Bowl, Billy Muzio and Ben Gretsch. Ben's actually in first, Billy's in second. We're both on the GOAT District, very recently. And we have what is Billy right now in the primetime band? Is he second right now or first?
I haven't even checked. That's a great question. Hang on.
Top three.
Billy Wazowski is top three right now in the NFFC primetime. He's been on recently. So we've had a wonderful run of guests. And we're going to bring you, a lot more great shows in November. This was a great way to kick it off with Mike. We appreciate you coming on. And, yeah, you can find my Writing It Player Profiler. I do the Waiver Wire article every week. You can find me on Twitter at the OG Fantasy, and you can find me here in the GOAT District. And, JD, we have a show Thursday night as well, right?
For sure, man. I was going to say, make sure you follow all three of these badasses in Fantasyland. And Thursday, we're bringing it back a bit Dynasty. We're kind of refocusing. We got our boy Matt Hicks, fellow GOAT, and, Mr. ESPN out there. He's coming on, and our boy Jordan McNamara from McNamara Dynasty. You all know him, all the goodness that he brings to the game. So we're gonna mix it up and bring both of them on. For those who don't know, on Thursday nights, we do a tailgate from 7 p.m. Eastern to 8 p.m. Eastern. Right before the Thursday night football game, get you a little warmed up while everybody's sitting at their your laptop on their phones trying to set up their lineup, deciding which Thursday night guy they need to figure out before the weekend. But stick with us for those. Stick with the channel. We're gonna keep bringing the heavy hitters. That's what we're doing here in the GOAT District. Smash the like, smash the subscribe. That's how you can show us the support. And you see the gear right here, the GOAT gear. I've got the hat, the shirt right here. Check out viridianglobal.com/collections/GOAT District for, whether it's tees, shirts, your way of showing your support again for the show is out there at Viridian. And they've got all kinds of goodness, whether it's fantasy players or other pods that you might listen to. Guys, again, don't drink and drive, man. Just seriously, it's not worth it. It's never worth it. It's, especially with all the options you have out there, you're better off, the embarrassment of calling someone if you don't want to Uber or can't Uber for whatever reason, but it's never worth it. Do not do it. Be safe out there. Guys, we'll check you all later. Go get those W's and make that run in the ship, guys. And tune in because we're going to help you get there. Later.
GOAT District, the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's And I always be trading. And I always be trading. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
I don't know if anyone else noticed, but they established the run colors go really well with the GOAT District colors. I don't know if anyone else noticed that. And, I'm just saying, if you want to bring that to the attention of Mr. Silva or I don't know, something like that.
Similar color scheme, man. We got it. It's the GOAT green.
Dude, that was awesome, man. Appreciate you coming on tonight.
Yeah.